Dr. Samina. This is my response to Franz Fanon, Chapter 1, Take 5. So, to share a little bit of background, in revolutionary thinking and decolonial thinking, all these kinds of things we've been talking about. One thing I can't get past was, and it's interesting because Cesar actually wrote and he said this in and the dogs were silent. Well, the narrator, I guess, states the children or the rebel of the revolution will die. And my mentors often would talk about that. They'd often highlight that. And so, because I'm a person that like tries to figure out, and I think they knew because they grew up during the time of like Franz Fanon, and my other mentor, he grew up during the time of Cesar, and they probably took these understandings to heart, I think, a little bit, because it's evident anyway. So that's the context, and that's where I'm thinking from, because I don't know if I can see a revolution where I sacrifice or knowingly that my children will die, or that I'm a rebel and I fight for freedom and we're liberated, but then my children, like I can't put those, I can't reconcile that in my head. But there was a point about Fanon when he talked about because there's a few different terminologies that I had learned. Atmospheric violence. There was power to the proletariat. There was fratricidal struggle, or fratricidal, and that's a struggle to describe how oppression causes people to fight each other instead of the system controlling them. He talks about the libido, but Fanon, the context in Fanon is how libido shows how colonialism reshapes desire and self-worth, not just politics or law. There's auto de fe, and and these are part of my learning of new phrases. But before I finish my other thought I started with here, I wanted to talk about how decolonization never goes unnoticed, for it focuses on and fundamentally alters being and transforms the spectator, crushed to a non-essential state, into a privileged actor captured in a virtually grandiose fashion by the spotlight of history. It infuses a new rhythm specific to a new generation of men with a new language and a new humanity. Decolonization is truly the creation of new men. But such a creation cannot be attributed to a supernatural power. The thing colonized becomes a man through the very process of liberation. And then decolonization therefore implies the urgent need to thoroughly challenge the colonial situation. Its definition can, if we want to describe it accurately, be summed up in the well-known words, "The last shall be first." Decolonization is a verification of this at a descriptive level. Therefore, any decolonization is a success. So I wanted to highlight that because the thought I was thinking of, and I was kind of loosely reading here, but they were talking about in 1954, Vietnamese people at Dien Bien Phu um, had a victory. And I think what happened was that they removed the leaders above them, the colonized, and then they put somebody else in. And essentially, then what happened was, what now? Because they noticed that nothing happened, right? And then they kind of, there's another phrase in there I can't remember, but it just like nothing changes. Nothing changes because of the atmospheric violence is constant, and it's everyday violence, and it oppresses the people that are living inside it. Atmospheric violence uses a form of auto de pa. Is that what I said? Auto de fe. They use public punishment to enforce obedience. They humiliate people, and so now the people are stuck. They're gonna stay stuck. And so to kind of understand that a little bit, and understand that violence, normalized violence, might not work. But another thought came to me, because Cesar, he talks about violence, the colonizers' violence towards the colonizer, right? So it's an inward violence, and Fanon brings out violence as an atmospheric violence, that it's outside now, right? I wonder, and kind of my connection, and kind of like my surrealist thinking is, what if we have to become violent in ourselves to decolonize, and not decolonize in the sense of using and replacing the systems above us, but seeing in ourselves what we can do, right? Returning to traditional ways of knowing for our own cultures, for the things that were taken away from our histories. We have to be violent to fight for that. I actually heard this young man was doing a presentation, and he was presenting on when he went to New Zealand, and over there they're like, be militant in learning your language, be violent in learning your language and the culture, and so I kind of connected those kind of things, because it's, as we move forward as a nation, like I'm thinking in the context of a Nahiawak is Nahio Iniawak, like Nahio Cree people. We have to bring that. We have to know, right? And in learning the language and in fighting for that, that's the little bit of success, I think, maybe that's being alluded to by Fanon. But the feelings, there's some interesting feelings that come out. There's when I read about the colonized who have made up their mind to take such an agenda into a driving force have been prepared for violence from time immemorial. That's kind of an interesting thought, because I always think, in the context of us, we use that word time immemorial. So since the start of time, the colonizers were innately violent, and they just, innately conquered, and they wanted to conquer, and whereas our struggle is different, but like, we've been here since the start of time, and that's how we use that word. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But so like I said, there's phrases I shared. I think what I shared a little bit in that bigger quote, decolonization, creating a new humanity, right, is the things we can learn. If we're violent and decolonizing, we can become new people, new beings, new mindsets, as opposed to cutting and replacing the leaders above us, to enforce what's happening. And the emotions are kind of like everywhere, but like I said at the start, the sons of the revolution, or the rebels of the revolution, will die, and so All I have to say is I think there's just more questions. There's just more questions,